Chris stepped off the plane with a small suitcase, tired eyes, and exactly $1 in his pocket, but in his heart he carried something far more powerful than money: hope. He had dreamed of coming to the United States for years, imagining bright streets, endless opportunities, and a new future that looked nothing like his past. In reality, the airport felt loud, busy, and confusing. His English was simple, his confidence even smaller, and he had no friends, no job, and no place to stay longer than the cheap hostel he had booked for 2 nights. Still, when he stepped outside and felt the warm air on his face, he whispered to himself, "This is my new beginning," and that quiet sentence became the first brick in the new life he was determined to build. The ride from the airport to the city was a shock for Chris. Cars moved fast, streets were huge, and everything looked different from home. He tried reading the signs, repeating English words in his head: exit, caution, downtown, station, but he mispronounced most of them. It didn't matter. What mattered was that every word he learned brought him closer to the life he wanted. When he reached the city center, Chris stepped out of the bus and immediately realized he had no idea where he was. People rushed by with coffee cups, backpacks, and serious faces. He took a deep breath and said quietly, "Don't panic." Then he approached a stranger, a tall man in a blue shirt. "Excuse me, can you help me?" The man smiled and pointed Chris toward the street he was searching for, adding, "Welcome to America." Those 3 words warmed Chris more than the sunshine. He thanked the man and walked in the direction he was shown, repeating "Welcome to America" like a little piece of magic. He reached the hostel, checked in, and placed his suitcase on the tiny bed. The room was small, the walls thin, and outside he could hear sirens and voices, but Chris felt safe enough to breathe. He took out a notebook and wrote his first sentence in his new life: Day 1. I will not give up. The next morning, Chris woke up early and looked at his single dollar. He couldn't buy breakfast, but he didn't feel hungry. He felt driven. He walked around the city searching for "Help Wanted" signs. Most places didn't take him seriously because of his limited English. Some employers shook their heads, others quickly said, "No experience? No job," and one cafe manager waved him away before he even finished his sentence. Every rejection felt heavy, but he reminded himself, "I didn't come here to quit." At noon, exhausted and thirsty, Chris stopped near a small cafe. A worker accidentally dropped a stack of trays, and without thinking, Chris rushed to help him pick them up. The cafe owner saw this and said, Do you need work?" Chris nodded quickly. Yes, I need work." The owner looked at him, then at the trays, then back again. "English good." Chris hesitated but answered honestly, "Not very good, but I work hard." For a moment, the owner said nothing. Then he nodded. "Okay. You wash dishes. Start today." Chris felt his chest fill with energy so strong he almost cried. He got his first job in America, not because of perfect English, not because of experience, but because of kindness and willingness to help. The kitchen was hot, noisy, and smelled like a mix of soup, onions, and burnt bread. Chris's hands got wet and wrinkled within minutes, and his back hurt from bending over the sink. But every time he felt tired, he reminded himself that this was the first real step toward his new life. He washed dishes faster than anyone else, listened to every English word spoken around him, and repeated the short phrases he heard: "More plates," "Be careful," "Good job," "Almost done." Even when he mispronounced the words, he kept trying. After his shift, he received his first small payment. It wasn't much, but to Chris, it felt like a treasure. For the first time, he bought himself a sandwich and ate it slowly on a bench outside. The city lights flickered around him, and for the first time since arriving, he didn't feel lost. He felt like he belonged, even just a little. That night, he returned to the hostel and wrote in his notebook, "Day 2. I have a job. I will grow." He touched the page gently, almost afraid it wasn't real. But it was. His new beginning had truly started, not with money, not with luck, but with courage, effort, and a single small yes from someone who believed in him for just a moment. And Chris promised himself that he would turn that moment into a future worth fighting for. Chris woke up early on his third morning in America with tired hands, a stiff back, and a quiet determination burning inside him. His job at the cafe was difficult, but it was his first real step toward a better future, and the thought of that kept him moving. He washed his face with cold water, put on his only clean shirt, and walked through the busy streets to get to work. The city felt less frightening today. He recognized a few buildings, a few signs, a few faces. Every small familiar thing made him feel a little stronger. When he arrived at the cafe, the owner, Mr. Harris, looked at him and nodded. "On time." "Good," he said. Chris smiled proudly, even though the sentence was short and simple. Being seen as reliable meant a lot to him. The kitchen filled quickly with noise, the clatter of plates, the sizzling of hot oil, the constant hum of conversation. Chris liked listening to the workers speak, even when he understood only half of what they said. He repeated their phrases quietly to himself: "Break time," "Order up," "Behind you," "More towels." Sometimes they laughed at his accent or his mistakes, but he didn't let it hurt him. He told himself that every mistake was a lesson, and every lesson brought him closer to the life he wanted. During a short break, he sat outside with a small cup of water. A waitress named Julia joined him. "You're new here, right?" she asked. Chris nodded. "Yes. I just came here." Julia smiled. "Your English is not bad. You just need practice." Her kindness surprised him. For days he had been so focused on surviving that he forgot people could also be friendly. "Thank you," he said, trying hard not to mispronounce the words. Julia pointed at his notebook. "You study every day?" Chris nodded again. "I must. English is key." Julia laughed softly. "Well, if you want, I can help you. After work, maybe we practice a little." Chris almost dropped his cup. Someone wanted to help him. Someone believed in his effort. He felt a warm wave of gratitude. "Yes," he said immediately. "Please. I want to learn." "You want to learn," she corrected gently. "Yes," he said, smiling. "I want to learn." The rest of the workday passed quickly. He washed dishes, cleaned tables, and tried to memorize every English word he heard. His brain felt full, heavy, exhausted, but in the best possible way. After closing time, Julia sat with him at a small table and taught him simple sentences. "I am learning English," she said. "Repeat." Chris repeated slowly, stumbling over the sounds but trying with all his strength. "I am learning English." "Good," she said. "Now try this. I work at a cafe." "I work at a cafe," he said proudly. They practiced for almost an hour. Sometimes Julia laughed at his mistakes, but not in a cruel way, more like a friend who wanted him to succeed. For the first time since arriving, Chris felt like he wasn't alone. On his way back to the hostel, He repeated the new sentences again and again. When he reached his tiny room, he wrote in his notebook, Day 3. I learn new words. I have new friend. He underlined the last sentence twice. The next morning, he returned to the cafe with more confidence. He greeted the workers with a louder hello, and even though his voice shook a little, he was proud of himself. Look at you, Julia said. You sound more confident today. Because I practice, he said. Practice is important. Very important, she agreed. Around noon, a customer spilled hot coffee, and Chris reacted without thinking. Careful, he shouted. It was the first time he used an English word naturally during an emergency. Julia looked at him with a surprised smile. See, it's working. Later in the day, Mr. Harris called Chris to the front. You work hard, he said. Very hard. That's good. Chris's heart raced. Was he in trouble or being praised? Thank you, he said carefully. Mr. Harris pointed to a new schedule on the wall. More hours for you, if you want. Chris looked at the schedule and saw that his working hours had increased. More hours meant more money, more stability, more progress. Yes, he said with confidence. I want. Mr. Harris nodded and walked away, but the moment felt huge to Chris. It meant someone trusted him. Someone saw his effort. Someone believed he was worth the opportunity. After work, Chris bought himself a small dinner, just a simple sandwich and a bottle of water, but it tasted like victory. He sat on a bench, watching cars pass by and listening to the hum of the city. For the first time, he felt the busy streets did not swallow him, they carried him forward. That night he wrote, Day 4. I have more hours. I learn more English. I feel strong. As he closed the notebook, Chris realized something important. He did not need to succeed fast. He did not need to be perfect. What he needed was to adapt, learn, and keep trying, one day at a time. And he promised himself that he would continue, no matter how difficult the journey became. His new life was growing slowly, but it was growing. And that was enough. Chris woke up before sunrise, feeling both tired and excited. Every day in America still felt like a test, but now he knew he could handle more than he once believed. His job at the cafe gave him a routine, and his practice sessions with Julia helped him grow more confident in English. Still, Chris understood one thing clearly. If he wanted a better future, he needed to learn faster and push harder. When he arrived at work, the cafe was unusually busy. A large group of customers filled the tables, and the kitchen was louder than usual. Pots clattered, voices overlapped, and the air smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Chris jumped into action, washing dishes quickly and delivering clean plates to the cooks. But as the lunch rush grew, he made a mistake. He dropped a stack of plates. They shattered loudly on the floor, and the whole kitchen went silent for a moment. Chris felt his face burn with embarrassment. Sorry, he said, kneeling to pick up the pieces. He expected Mr. Harris to yell, but instead the owner walked over and said calmly, It happens. Just be careful. Those two simple sentences felt like a gift. Chris nodded gratefully and continued working, moving a bit slower but with more focus. Later, during a short break, he told Julia, I feel stupid. I break plates. She shook her head. No. Everyone makes mistakes. That's how you learn. Chris knew she was right, but emotionally the moment still stung. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to be someone people could rely on. That afternoon, another challenge appeared. A customer asked Chris a question at the counter. "Hey, can you tell me what sandwiches you have without cheese?" Chris froze. The words came too fast, and he didn't fully understand. His hands trembled slightly. One moment," he said, then rushed to find Julia. "What customer say?" "I don't understand," he admitted. She repeated the question slowly, explaining each word. Together, they returned to the customer, and Chris tried again. "We have turkey without cheese and veggie without cheese." The customer smiled. "Perfect, thank you." Chris exhaled quietly. It was a small victory, but victories mattered. When his shift ended, he walked outside feeling mentally exhausted. Learning English while working was harder than he imagined, and sometimes he wondered if he would ever feel comfortable speaking. But as he walked home, he saw something that changed his mood completely. A community sign offering free evening English classes at a nearby center. He stopped and read the poster twice. "Free classes, every Tuesday and Thursday. Beginners welcome." It felt like a message written just for him. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Day 5. I want to learn more. I need English for better life. I will go to class." The next evening, Chris entered the community center nervously. The room was small, with plastic chairs and a whiteboard, but the atmosphere felt warm. People from different countries sat together, all with the same goal, to learn English. The teacher welcomed him with a smile. "You're in the right place," she said gently. That sentence alone made Chris feel safe. The class started with simple exercises, introductions, basic verbs, pronunciation practice. Chris struggled, but he kept trying, repeating each phrase until the sounds felt more natural. At the end of the class, the teacher said, "Learning a new language is like climbing a mountain. It is slow, but every step matters." Chris walked back to the hostel with new motivation. He felt tired, but a good kind of tired, like someone who is building something real, something important. That night, before sleeping, he whispered, "I can do this." And for the first time, he truly believed it. Chris felt a new rhythm forming in his life, a pattern that made each day feel more meaningful. In the mornings, he worked hard at the cafe, learning new tasks and trying to speak more English with customers. In the evenings, he went to the community English classes, slowly gaining confidence with every lesson. His days were long, but they were filled with progress, and that alone kept him motivated. At the cafe, Mr. Harris began trusting Chris with more responsibilities. One morning he said, "Chris, can you help prepare the front area? Clean tables, fill napkins, check the counter." Chris nodded proudly. 2 months earlier he couldn't even greet customers without fear, and now he was being asked to work in the front, where English mattered most. He repeated the instructions to himself carefully. Clean tables. Fill napkins. Check counter. When customers walked in, he greeted them with a quiet but clear, "Hello, welcome." Some smiled, others barely noticed, but every successful greeting felt like a small personal victory. One day, an older man walked in and tried to make small talk. "Nice weather today, isn't it?" Chris froze for half a second, then remembered the phrase Julia had taught him. "Yes, very nice weather," he said, hoping his accent wasn't too strong. The man nodded and continued with his day. Chris stood there, stunned. He had just had his first real small-talk moment in English. He couldn't wait to tell Julia. At the end of the shift, Julia joined him outside. "You did great today," she said. "I heard you greet customers." Chris smiled shyly. "I try. Every day little better." "Exactly," she replied. "That's how learning works." In the evening English class, the teacher introduced a new exercise, telling a short story about your day. When it was Chris's turn, he stood up nervously. "Today, I work in front of cafe," he began. "I say hello to customers, and one man talk about weather." The whole class clapped softly, and the teacher said, "Very good, Chris. Clear and understandable." Chris felt his chest warm with pride. After class, he stayed behind and asked the teacher, "How I learn faster?" She smiled and said, "Use English everywhere. With friends, at work, even when you think alone. The more you use it, the more natural it becomes." Chris took her advice seriously. On his walk home, he described everything he saw out loud: street, cars, people, lights. It felt strange at first, but soon it became a habit. Every night he studied new words, repeating them until he could almost hear them in conversations around him. His notebook grew fuller each day. By the end of the month, he realized something important. He was no longer the scared newcomer who didn't understand anything. He was becoming someone stronger, someone braver, someone who could build a real life in this new country. And even though he still struggled, he knew one thing for certain. He was moving forward, step by step, and he wasn't going to stop. That night, he wrote, "I grow every day. My future is coming." Chris woke up one morning with a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, a quiet sense of pride. Life was still challenging, and every day brought new problems to solve, but he no longer felt lost or helpless. He was building something real, step by step, and he could see the difference in himself. When he walked through the streets, he understood more signs. When he listened to conversations, he caught more words. When customers spoke to him, he didn't panic anymore. He was beginning to feel like he belonged. At the cafe, Mr. Harris noticed his progress too. One day he said, "Chris, you've improved a lot. You're reliable, hard-working." Hearing those words made Chris stand a little taller. "Thank you," he said, trying to hide how emotional he felt. "I try every day." "And it shows," Mr. Harris replied. "If you keep this up, I might teach you how to help at the register." Chris almost couldn't believe it. Working the register was the job he once thought impossible. Too much English, too much pressure, too many chances to make mistakes. But now, the idea didn't scare him. It excited him. Later that afternoon, Julia approached him with a smile. "Guess what? I heard Mr. Harris talking. He's really impressed." Chris grinned. "I want to learn more. I want to be better." "You want to be better," she corrected gently. "And you are. Seriously. You came here with almost no English, and now look at you." Her words meant more than she realized. They reminded Chris how far he had come since his first day, the day he had felt lost, alone, and unsure of everything. After work, Chris headed to his evening English class. The teacher had prepared a special assignment. Each student had to talk about their goals for the future. When it was Chris's turn, he stood up slowly. His hands shook a little, but his voice was stronger than before. "When I come to America," he began, "I have $1. No friends. No good English. I feel scared. But I work hard. I learn. People help me. No. I want bigger goals. The class listened closely. Chris continued, choosing each word carefully. I want to speak English very well. I want better job. I want to grow. And I want to help people like me, new people, scared people. Because small help can change big things. The room filled with gentle applause, and the teacher said, "That is a beautiful goal, Chris. And you can reach it." Walking home after class, Chris felt something new inside him, a steady confidence, not loud or showy, but firm and real. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more mistakes, more days when he felt tired or unsure. But he was no longer afraid of the journey. He had already proven to himself what he was capable of. That night, he wrote his final words for the week in his notebook. I started with $1. Now I have hope, skills, friends, and future. This is only the beginning. And as he closed the notebook, Chris smiled, ready for everything that would come next.